Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the Earlham Teambuilder Dynasty here on NCAA 14, featuring that college football revamp. Of course, we are here at the end of Season 5. We got this off-season recap for you guys here as we are getting ready for next season and kind of recapping this year as well on top of it, because we are national champions, our first national championship in school history, but we didn't even reach, a Power 5 conference yet. We haven't even dominated the Power 5 conferences. So, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and, there's still some room in the tank, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to have a great episode here. If you're excited for it, I need you guys to do me a favor. Smash that like button, as well as hit subscribe if you have to be brand new. Leave a comment for me as well. I try to read all of your comments, of course. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. So this particular season ended up being really special for us at the end of the day. And it was, for the most part, like with the exception of a couple of games, we dominated every opponent that we played against. We started off playing against Oklahoma State at home. They ended up going bowling, and we beat them 31-7. Bluffton, who ended up 9-4, we destroyed them on the road. That was one of the shutouts that we had this season. That was probably our best game of the entire year. And then we got to conference play. We start off by dominating Memphis. SMU did give us a tough time, but we did come back and win that game. Navy, we beat 41-17. Cincinnati, who ended up in the almost in the top 10, we actually blew them out 40-6 on the road. So that really helped us propel ourselves into the national championship. East Carolina ended up going, 4-8 in their first year. I believe they have a new coach, one of our coordinators, but we beat them 45-9. Beat UCF. We actually shut out UCF. Beat Southern Florida 37-10. Shut out Auburn on top of it. And then the last two games, beat Tulsa 41-17, and then Charlotte 62-19. And then, of course, our postseason play, the American Conference Championship game, where this game went to overtime. It was a little scary for us, but we found a way to come out on top at the end of the day. We won 34-17. And then against Georgia in the national championship, we win by a touchdown that we scored with 17 seconds left. We shut the door on them, and we did it with our defense. Speaking of our defense, I think it's time to go ahead and see, some of the All-Americans on this list. And oh boy, do we have quite a few guys. On the defensive side of football, Chris Ty and Finn Otis, two of our starting defensive linemen. Actually, 3 of our 4 defensive linemen are on the first team All-American list. That's Chris Ty, Finn Otis, which I'm not surprised about, but Ian Levine also gets on the list as well. He had a pretty solid year himself. 27 tackles, 16 TFLs. He had 8 sacks in a forced fumble/fumble recovery as well on top of it. But that's not the only All-Americans that we had on this list as well. Mario Hernandez is here as well. He ended up with a career high 4 interceptions this season, 5 pass deflections as well as on top of it. Even forced a fumble and got a fumble recovery on his hands as well. He really improved himself, and he could be a borderline NFL player when it's all said and done. Justin Burden, no surprises here. He's on this All-American list too. 81 total tackles, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions. Also has multiple kick returns for touchdowns. He ended up with 5 touchdowns on the season. That is ridiculous. Didn't get the best returner award, but he won multiple awards himself. And then Jacob Ramos, he gets first team All-American for kicker. And then Frank Bowers is first team for special teams, the best returner in college football. Then over on the second team, we actually had somebody on the offensive side of the ball, CJ Holman. He ended up with a good year himself, over 1,200 yards on the ground, 17 touchdowns. That was the only player on the offensive side of the ball that won All-American. We do have a couple other defensive players on the All-American list. Josh Brown and MJ Granson also getting up in there. So with the All-American list taken care of, let's go ahead and check out the stats for our guys over the course of this entire season. And we were led by Miami Ugalye. He actually had a little bit of a step back in terms of passing the football. He had 2,400 yards passing, 22 touchdowns, did also have 10 interceptions as well. His completion percentage did go down a little bit the last couple of games, but he was more efficient with his passes than he was last season, and he did throw 70 less passes than he did last year. But to make up for that, he did have a career high in rushing yards on the ground. He ended up with 682 yards. Also ended up with 11 touchdowns as well, so that's a career high. So he ends up with 31 rushing touchdowns and also 69 passing touchdowns. So 100 touchdowns over the course of his career. I don't think he makes it to the NFL, to be honest with you. His arm is just not good enough. Only 76 throw power, 76 throw accuracy. And that kind of came into the play, in the postseason, but at the same time, he was such a dynamic athlete that we couldn't keep him on the field. Even with the improvement that CJ Patton had, he had a higher overall, and it only got better as the season went on. Now, I'm pretty sure he will go ahead and be the starter next season. CJ Patton with that 88 overall. And, when he came in for sweep-up duty, he wasn't bad. 27 for 49, 392 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He really improved from his true freshman campaign when we tried to go ahead and put him in as part of a 2-quarterback system. Really brought his interceptions down, So that's stuff that I do really like to see at the end of the day. He's not as great of an athlete as Miami Ugalye is, but I think he's more likely to be an NFL prospect as that stereotypical NFL quarterback. Now, at one point, both Miami and CJ got hurt over the course of the season, so Orlando Layden actually had to make an appearance against SMU, and he wasn't too bad either. 6 for 10, 77 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, that's honestly not bad considering, he was still learning the playbook at the time. He did have negative rushing yards, but it is what it is. For the running game, I kind of talked about CJ Holman, who was on the second-team All-American list, as well as Miami Ugalye, but Jesse Green got some touches as well. He was always a solid backup tailback for us, and we're going to miss him for sure. He ended up with 3 touchdowns on the season, 375 total yards. It wasn't as good as his first 2 seasons. He actually kind of steadily went downhill, even though he had more carries to work with. But he was a decent backup running back for us. It's sad that he's gonna have to graduate. The Anderson transfer, not getting as much love, but I mean, it is what it is. Also getting into the end zone though was Ryan Smith. He was our true freshman at fullback. He at 6'1", 236 pounds. Fullbacks don't get a lot of carries, nowadays at the collegiate level, but, he ended up, 2 carries, inside the 5-yard line and turned one of them into a touchdown. So, I mean, it is what it is there. And then for the receivers, Jariah Bond was our leading receiver for this season. A nice season for him overall, 57 catches, 746 yards, and 5 touchdowns. The first 2 being career highs for him, and ended up with 16 total touchdowns on his career. That's not bad whatsoever. Jakeem Short in his senior campaign, he was never a great receiver, but he always ended up being a safe option for us. I think the lack of athleticism that he had at the wide receiver position kind of killed him a little bit, in his collegiate career. And, being a possession guy and only 5'11", that doesn't necessarily help either, but even with the lack of size, he was a surprisingly good one-on-one, throw it up to kind of target. He ended up with 3 touchdowns, 536 yards. It was his worst season as a wide receiver, but at the same time, he was a good receiver for us. CJ Holman was also a good receiver out of the backfield, 277 yards and 5 touchdowns. Adam Hill III in his senior campaign, he had 5 touchdowns as well. That was a career high for him, but wasn't targeted as much, and had a big dip from his junior campaign. 33 catches, 424 yards. That is a huge drop off from the previous season, but he found the end zone more often. Jake Elliott, however, he actually stepped up big time in the absence of Derek Blue. He broke his tailbone, and he was effectively out for the vast majority of this season, but 30 catches, 425 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Those are all career highs. Derek Blue did find the end zone, ended up with 9 catches, 111 yards, and a score, but he was hurt for most of the year. Robert Price Jr., had more catches and more touchdowns as well. 9 catches for 128 yards. Henry B. York, who was an original walk-on that managed to survive not being cut, he got into the end zone. He actually caught the touchdown that gave Miami Ugawie the school record for most touchdown passes in a career. He wasn't very effective other than that, though. 4 catches for 45 yards. Just really wasn't a factor after year number 1. But, I'm glad that he was at least able to stick around. Moving over to the blocking, and John Bird was the leading blocker for us in terms of pancakes. He was trying to build a pancake house here at Earlham College. 12 total pancakes and no sacks. Nate Coleman, who turned out into a solid player, actually. He was an original walk-on as well. He molded himself to a solid player. 11 pancakes and 3 sacks allowed. Then Lionel Williams was also, someone more notable. Did have 10 pancakes and did not allow any sacks. Finally, for the defensive side of football, the strength of this team. It was a lot of talent on this defense, man. It played better than that 88 defensive overall that we started with. And eventually got up to a 90. But Justin Burton led the team in tackles by a long shot. He ended up with 86 total tackles, had 13 TFLs, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions. Dude was electric. We all knew that. Josh Brown and Nate Hunt weren't too far behind with 65 and 61 tackles respectively. And then there's Chris Ty with 58 tackles. Now, as for sacking the quarterback, man, did we do some of that. Finn Otis got that school record for a single season for most sacks in a season. Been a 3-year starter for us thus far, and 27 sacks in his career, most of them coming this season. I'm excited to see what he can do in his senior campaign. Chris Ty was pretty good too, ended up with 12 total sacks. He's been good since he stepped on campus. He has 19 sacks through 2 seasons. Ian Levine had 8 sacks. Justin Burton had 4 sacks. Roderick Abraham, who was a freshman All-American, he had 25 tackles and 3 sacks, in his first season on the field. And then we had guys like Frank Bowers, MJ Granson, Nate Hunt, Greg Jenkins, Jamie Jenkins, and Josh Brown, all with 2 sacks. And then Izzy Thomas, who surprisingly came in at one point. So did Mario Hernandez. They had a singular sack as well. As for interceptions, we forced quite a few turnovers this season. Mario Hernandez did lead the way. He had 4 interceptions, but he wasn't the only one with multiple INTs, though. RJ Greenlake, Cameron Frost, Justin Burton, and MJ Granson had multiple picks. Josh Brown and Deontay McLaurin also had interceptions as well. We ended up with 3 defensive touchdowns on the season. Mario Hernandez coming towards the end. RJ Greenlake against Bluffton, and then Deontay McLaurin, I think his was against Memphis, but I'm not quite sure about it. But our defense played quite an impact this season. Justin Burton as well. I forgot to highlight this while we were talking about him as an All-American. He had 5 forced fumbles on the season. That is insane. So this guy, he had 5 forced fumbles, he had 2 interceptions, and then he also had 5 touchdowns, as a returner. This man was absolutely insane. Ian Levine, Mario Hernandez, Finn Otis, and Chris Ty also had forced fumbles to their names as well. Chris Ty, however, had the most fumble recoveries. He had 2 fumble recoveries on the season, with Josh Brown, Mario Hernandez, and Ian Levine also getting their hands on the ball as well. So, of course, there is not any surprises here, but it's been a steady incline since we took control back in season number 1, starting off just 1-11. Then we got to 3-9, then 7-6, and then the last 2 years we have simply just taken off, winning the Rose Bowl back in season number 4, went 13-1, and then winning a bigger conference this year and a bigger prize at the national level this year as well. 27-1 in the last 2 years. You absolutely love to see it. So of course, because we were a championship winning program, the coordinators are going to get theirs, and that was the case here. Both Robert Pugh and Josh Dennis, we have new coordinators to work with. So we'll have Chip Lindsey coming in as the offensive coordinator, and Aaron Larson, who comes in as our new defensive coordinator for this upcoming season. So I want to go ahead and see where our new coaches went to. So Ryan Pugh, who was actually our offensive coordinator this past season, he actually wins. He garners the attention of Alabama football. He's going to go ahead and be the head coach of Alabama. That is insane, so congratulations to him. So we're going to certainly try to go ahead and get Alabama on the schedule for season number 6. We'll have to see what happens there. Then Josh Dennis, who was actually he was actually our defensive coordinator this past season. He actually is going to be a head coach as well. He is going to take over the Maryland Terrapins football program over in the Big Ten. So you'll love to see it. You'll love to see Maryland out here in the in this conference, or getting one of our coaches. So I mean, congrats to him as well. As for where our one of our coordinators came from, Chip Lindsey actually was the offensive coordinator for Alabama. So we do a little bit of a trade between our coaching staff and Alabama's coaching staff. As for the other coordinator, that's going to be his first coaching job. And, that we'll go ahead and reveal who our new offensive coordinator is going to be really shortly. But, the most difficult part of, the off season, I would say, is the players leaving stage. And, we are going to end up having 2 guys going to the NFL. Jacob Ramos, our kicker, who won, the Grozo Award 2 times in a row. He's actually projected to go in the 4th round. That's really good for a kicker. And then Justin Burden, who is also going to the pro draft as well. He's going to the NFL. He's projected to go in the 1st round. And I would venture to say he's probably one of the best players in college football. If it wasn't for such, emphasis on quarterbacks, he's probably the number 1 pick, to be honest with you. Surprisingly, though, Cam Frost is not going to the NFL. He's good enough to go, but, just might have other plans. Maybe just because he's undersized, or I don't know what's going on with that. But Cam Frost is not going to the NFL. Neither is Nate Hunt. Nate Hunt chose not to declare. But look at this talent that's leaving us. Solid players. Cam Frost, CJ Holman, who was a starter. Jakeem Short, who was a starter. RJ Greenlake, who was a career backup, but one of the best backups in college football, I'll argue. Miami Ugalye, who was our starter for 4 seasons. Brown, who was a starter for 4 seasons. Green, who is a quality backup. Jacoby Black, 4-year starter, I believe. Yeah, he was a 4-year starter. Same with Adam Hill III. Same with Deontay McLaurin. Same with Jariah Bond. A lot of guys leaving this team. Cameron Frost, Jacob Long Schumacher, Henry B. York, a lot of walk-ons too. Coco Ray is graduating as well. We haven't said his name, I don't think at all really, since the first couple of seasons, but a lot of guys that are leaving this team this season. But I'm curious to see who like the best players are, and it looks like he I'm looking at both Jacob Ramos, not him necessarily, but Justin Burden is probably a top 10, top 15 pick when it's all said and done. It's 4. 5, 6, 7. Yeah, Justin Byrne will probably be a top 10 pick. But yeah, man, let's go ahead and check out and see what's going on with that. So we go ahead and move ourselves over to the pro draft results, and no surprises here. Justin Byrne is going to be, a top 10 pick in the upcoming NFL draft. And then our first custom recruit that ends up getting drafted is Jacob Ramos. 5'10", 183 pounds, but as a kicker, manages to get drafted in the 4th round. Shout out to these two guys right here being the first 2 players to end up getting drafted into the NFL. However, no surprises here though. We end up not getting any transfer requests. I'm actually surprised at this point that we haven't had anyone transfer out of our program necessarily. So that's interesting as well. But I mean, at least not losing anyone to the transfer portal, but not gaining anyone in the transfer portal, I'm not surprised either necessarily. We're just at the point, in this dynasty where if you're not a true freshman coming in, you're most not likely not coming here unless we actually recruit you in the beginning of the recruiting process. So that being said, that does mean that it's time for us to go ahead and clear or get the rest of our recruiting board taken care of. There's only one more person left that we need to recruit, and that's Johnny Butler, the 35th ranked guard in this recruiting class. I think he would be a really nice add for us going forward to help beef up our offensive line a little bit. We're currently in a recruiting battle with Navy and Oklahoma State. Since we can't add anybody else onto our recruiting board, only thing left to do now is move on to signing day and see if we get Johnny Butler or any other preferred walk-ons that come into the program as well. And no surprises here, Johnny Butler does end up signing with the program, and it looks like we got 4 preferred walk-ons as well on top of it, including a 4-star prospect. So that's going to be really interesting to see. So let's go ahead and check out signing day, see what happened to go down. We'll see how much it took to get Johnny Butler. Yeah, we blew everybody out of the water. We beat Navy by 7,000 points, Oklahoma by 10,000 points. So we get another person to beef our offensive line. As for our, looks like we got a couple of preferred walk-ons on top of it. Looks like the 4-star is a wide receiver, and then I'll have to go ahead and figure out, who the other 3 preferred walk-ons are. I know they're all 3 stars, so I'll have to go ahead and check that out and see what's going on there. So now we go ahead and get into some of the position changes that I want to make, and I always want to start with the offensive line. I think what I'm going to do first and foremost is we have 4 left tackles, and I'm thinking what I'm going to do. I'm going to move Jarrett Neal over to that right tackle position. We don't really have anyone to really spare necessarily on the rest of the offensive line. We're going to definitely need to go after guards and tackles, I think, in the next recruiting class. So we'll move Jarrett Neal over to right tackle. He'll be a 3rd string guy over there. And, he'll sit behind both Sam Price and John Bird. And then, sometime in his junior season, he'll step in and be the starter over there. As for the defense, want to start things off, we have a ton of left ends, but we don't really have any, guys on the right side of the defensive line. So I think what I'm going to do, because I forgot to do this last season, Chris Ty moved over, so we're gonna move him over to right end, just make that official. That's where he played last season anyways, so we're just gonna make that official because I forgot to do that last off season. And then Michael Stewart as well, I think I'm gonna go ahead and move him over to that right end position as well. So we'll have that going, although don't know if actually we're going to move him back over to left end. Those 3 are fine. We'll have 5 left ends and then 3 right ends. So we have at least, I want to move, actually no, I want to move one of these left ends. Let's see, Izzy Thomas, had more appearances than Andy Robertson. So Andy Robertson, I'll actually move over to right end. And so he'll actually now back up Chris Ty. And then Greg Jenkins will move down the depth chart even further, which will suck, but it is what it is. We do have a decent amount of defensive tackles, so I do like to see that. As for what we ended up doing here, we're actually a little bit light on the for our linebacking core, but we did change. We're going to change our defensive format, so that will help us out a little bit. That being said, though, Carl Simon and Brad Workman are both coming over from on the right hand side. So I'm going to move Seth Gray out to left outside linebacker. So, they can start over both David Smith and Marlon Thomas, because I don't really want any of them to step the field. King Ray should be good to go, and then Nate Hunt should still be himself. So that'd be good to see. We did also bring in quite a few corners this upcoming season, but we are very short on corner, or at least short on safety. So I'm gonna go ahead and we got 7 corners. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm gonna move the slowest corner in Matt Marshall. Matt Marshall will go over and play strong safety. That's really the only corner I can spare. I really need to go about getting some safeties. We only have 4 safeties on the roster. And then we have a new kicker as well. Josh Ray is going to be kicking for us this upcoming season. So we're going to have to be used to, not having a guy that has an absolute boot of a leg like in years past. We still will have TK Johnson as our punter. But one of my favorite parts of the offseason, though, is that we have the training results coming in, and we'll have our first ever 99 overall guy, Nate Hunt, senior red shirt. He's got a 92 speed, 97 acceleration. He actually could be a kick returner if we want him to do that, to be honest with you. But we have another 90 overall as well in CJ Patton as a true senior, going to be a 93 overall of this upcoming season, has 88 throw power, 90 accuracy. He can't run though, so that means we can't do any of the read options that we're used to running, unless we want to bring in, our other quarterback for that. But it is what it is. So that would be something that will need to be said. Let's go ahead and check out the rest of the roster and see what's going on there. Looks like Daniel Carrington will win the starting job at running back. He will be the new starter with Tavante McCary and DJ Johnson, who will get a redshirt boost because he was redshirted this past season. Don't know if that will really affect anything. I think he'll probably come in as the third string guy this upcoming season. Fullback Ryan Smith is now over 70 overall. He's going to be 71 overall with 83 speed, which is not bad for a fullback. At wide receiver, we don't really have much going on because we're going to be really young at wide receiver next season. So going to be leaning on guys like Derek Blue and Jake Elliott, and I think Patrick Starr, who does he even have a catch? He didn't even have a catch last season. He might be our third wide receiver, so we're a little thin at wideout. So we're going to have to really try to go about replenishing that next year. Jeremy Sprinkle and Robert Jr., both are coming along pretty well. Basically tight end 1A and 1B, with Josiah James coming along pretty well too. At left tackle, we'll still have a solid offensive line overall. Xavier's going to be a 78. Ray Stevenson's an 81. Cornell Smith, actually the most improved, I think, on the offensive side of the ball. He's a 79 overall now. Andy Richardson, 74. He started last season. And then Sam Price III, who started last season, he's an 80 overall. So we'll still have a solid offensive line to work with. Just basically our skill players on the offensive side of the ball is going to be a major question mark. What won't be a question mark for us this upcoming season, though, is the defensive side of the ball. We do get basically all of our defensive linemen back. Ben Otis will be back. He's only an 86 overall, but he's turned out to a really good player when it's all said and done. Chris Ty is an 85, coming in as a junior with Andy Robertson, and we got some depth on the defensive side of the ball. There's no doubt about that. Defensive tackle will be interesting. There's going to be 2 starting spots, but it's going to be between 3 players. Roderick Abraham, Jamie Jenkins, and SpongeBob SquarePants all are going to be here competing for the opportunity to start at that defensive tackle position. That might be something that will be carried into the fall, before we get into the start of season number 6 to determine who's going to actually start for us there. Linebacker will be a bit of a question mark. We know Seth Gray's going to show up. We know King Ray. He's been waiting in the wings for a while. He's ready to go. And then Nate Hunt is our best player on the team, but the depth's going to be a major question mark. David Smith might be our best backup this upcoming season, so that's not a good look necessarily, but we're just going to have to figure out how to shake without it. At corner, we do have a couple of good corners, Mario Hernandez and MJ Granson, but the cornerback room is going to be really young this season. We're going to need our defensive line to step up because we're not going to get, I think, the covered sacks that we were accustomed to this past season. Over at free safety, Frank Bowers will still be starting. He's returning back, but he's going to be asked to step up. He was kind of a backup this past season. And then strong safety, we have a new strong safety. Chris Rogers is our new strong safety. Yeah, it's not looking too good over on strong safety. Definitely a weak spot for us. But it is what it is. We're gonna have to figure some things out. But the good news about this upcoming season is that since we have less than 70 players on the roster, we have 69. Yes, 69. Yeah, nice. On the roster, we actually don't need to cut anybody, which is really good to see. So this is going to be our final roster at the very least for this coming season. However, that being said, since I forgot to mention it, since I was so excited about the recruiting portion, I forgot about showing a recruiting board, showing who was available for custom recruits. These are all of the true freshmen that are coming in this season, that are that actually did make it to the final 70-man roster. So if you want one of these custom recruits, that's a true freshman, or the JUCO that we brought in Jeff Wheatley, who came in at quarterback. Same with another JUCO in Josh Ray. Just let me know down in the comments. I will have a little bit of a template with you guys, who's been taken, who's not been taken. You know what I'm saying? Regardless, I'm gonna try my best to get you in here, even though it may or may not be the player that you want. So at this point, I think it's also pretty clear that, the American Conference is simply too easy for us. We are even in technically the tougher side of the American Conference too, but we kind of breeze through it. So I think it's time for us to go ahead and move into a bigger conference. We're going to move, I think, into the Big Ten West this upcoming. So this is what it will currently look like, but that being said, because Purdue is also in the West, Indiana is actually we might mess around depending on which team. We might actually move over to the East Division, because Bloomington is also in the East Division as well. But that being said, we need to figure out who's going to replace us in the American Conference. So let's go ahead and see who happens to be the worst team in the Big Ten, at least from a prestige perspective. And it looks like it's Northwestern. They're a one-star program, so we're gonna go ahead and move them into the over to the American Conference. So yeah, it looks like we'll actually be over here on the West Division. Maryland will be out in East. That's where our one of our coordinators is. So yeah, I am really excited about this opportunity, and we should have a lot more interesting action especially if we get some good crossover games over from the East Division. So speaking of brutal schedules going into season number 6, this is going to be the most difficult schedule I think that we ever are going to face in this series thus far. We're starting off, not too bad. We go on the road to play against Southern Miss, but then we also go about going on the road to play against Alabama, who's surprisingly not ranked. Then we close things out with a home game against Arizona State. Then we'll have a bye week, and then we start conference play. On the road against Indiana, home against Minnesota. Then we have the toughest gauntlet of this entire season. On the road, Ohio State, Michigan State. On the road against Nebraska, who's number 19. Facing Illinois, who's number 11. Road game against Wisconsin. And then finish up the gauntlet with a road game against Iowa before we get a bye week finally. Then we finish off the season with a home game against Purdue. But man, oh man, are we going to have a really difficult schedule this season. I think with this schedule, if we have like one early season loss but end up winning the Big Ten, that should be enough to get us to the national championship once again. But man, this schedule is going to be brutal. And as for our red shirts, because we are really, light this season, we had a ton of people graduate. I'm actually only going to go ahead and redshirt one player this upcoming season, and that's Michael Stewart. He's going to be the 4th string defensive end, at least on the left-hand side, sitting behind a Finn Otis, behind Izzy Thompson, behind an Izzy Ray. So Michael Stewart, he's not going to go ahead and see the field this upcoming season, so we're going to go ahead and redshirt him here. Alright, man, so that being said, the next episode of this series, we're going to start season number 6, our first year in the Big Ten Conference. And we start off with some non-conference action going on the road to play against Southern Miss. It's going to be a good one, man, so make sure you smash that like button as well as hit subscribe if you do happen to be brand new as well. This is John J. Gaming on the mic signing off, but I'm hoping you're all out there having a wonderful day. Take care, everybody.